Over 50,000 children and young people who go to school in Wales have additional learning needs, and many don't get the support they need. The issues they experience, from reduced timetables to long waits for diagnoses, are all too familiar to our team. Meet 6-year-old Zach, whose experiences in education have left his parents battling for the right support. His mother, Amy, told us about the challenges they've faced.
Previous to all this, I used to say, oh, if I won the lottery, oh my God, the holidays, the houses. Now I say, I'd have a solicitor. Like, how did we get here? You know, my child has never had an education. He's 6 and he's missed his whole foundation education, and we're still in limbo a year later. And it's just so hard. Outside of this, Zach is the happiest go lucky little guy. He just lights up every room, and for everyone, he's so funny. And he just loves everyone and everything. Like, he will stop and pick up snails and worms in case they get stepped on and things like that. He's just so excited about life. So with Zach, when we first noticed he may need support, he was quite little, and because Zach had quite a lot of medical conditions, we didn't know what was causing what. So that was really, really daunting for us as parents, because we didn't know what he needed or how to get the help. There was some support as he went into nursery, which did help, but it didn't last.
It became quickly apparent that Zach was finding it difficult to manage in school. It was the start of a long battle for Amy in trying to get the right support.
We lived on eggshells because Zach was constantly, he just couldn't cope. He was constantly upset, constantly just dysregulated. He just wasn't himself at all. You know, we couldn't take him out anywhere. We couldn't do anything because he just was, his nervous system was so burnt out. He would wake up at 2 a.m, no school. And yeah, every day was just a battle.
According to Amy, Zach was also taught in what she described as a homemade unit without their knowledge.
He had trauma from being in with those other children that we weren't made aware of for nearly 3 months. We didn't know because Zach had a speech delay. He couldn't tell us. So a lot of this was going on that we didn't know about. So to then find out about it is just heartbreaking, and just the damage that's done. His experience in education has just been atrocious. You know, our child can't access education, and we've been made to feel as parents, if we have to choose between Zach going to school or Zach's mental health, and also our own, because we had no life when he was in school, and he only went for 2 hours a day, 3 times a week. Zach has never done a full day in school, and this has been going on now for over 2 years. We feel that the way the process works is that your child has to be broken before they'll offer you help, and it just shouldn't be that way. You know, the child should be able to learn in an environment that's safe for them. They shouldn't have to prove they're broken to get the education they deserve, and that's really hard to swallow.
Trying to get the support Zach needs has been extremely frustrating and upsetting for the family.
Nobody follows the rules. Guidelines don't exist, timelines don't exist. So we waited a year for an IDP, and it wasn't, you know, we had to pay for speech therapists, OTs to attend sessions to get it written properly because it was just vague. It could have applied to anyone. So it just wasn't worth the paper it was written on. And that took a year, and then at that point we had to take him out of school because enough was enough. I wasn't going to put my child through this anymore. And we were advised that we had to leave him on roll to be able to access help from the system. But in leaving him on roll, we're now in limbo because I can't access any home education support from the local authority, but equally I've been given nothing. I've heard from nobody. I've had 3 photocopied sheets with some shapes on since February for my child as an education, but the school is still getting full-time funded hours for my child. You know, and I think for us, just constantly being told you're welcome to home educate, it's just passing the responsibility, really, and it is not fair. It's just so draining and just so unpredictable, I think, is what I'm looking for. And you know, even if you do get the IDP right or something, that can change. Everything can change from day to day, week to week, because there's no guarantee your child is going to always get that support they need.
The ALN Act, passed by the Senedd in 2018, aims to make it easier for families to get the right support.
Even though the new ALN Act says that it goes on need, not diagnosis, that isn't true, because at every turn you're told you don't have a diagnosis. So as a parent, you're expecting that support to be there regardless, and it's not. If we get it right now, Zach can go back to mainstream. This is the point, is that if we get it right now, he has a chance of going back to mainstream and doing whatever he wants to do. If we get it wrong again, that child is never going to go back to education. So that's why we're at it's really scary as parents, because you're then looking at 18 years of being, at home, or, that he's never going to go back. And that is the problem with the system, is that, we've been to meetings and they say, oh, we haven't got anything for primary school kids, it's only for secondary, because they won't help until a child is broken at 12 and 13 when the damage has been done. Whereas I would like it resolved now, so that he has a chance just to be him and do whatever he wants to do, and not have to fight for it.
Since stopping going to school and making new friends in Forest School, Zach has been a happier boy. But the family need a long-term solution.
We've got Zach back. Ed Site came out to see Zach recently, and he'd seen him when he was in the school setting as well. And he said to us, this is the first time I've met Zach. And that was lovely to hear, but it was also really hard to hear, because you think, oh gosh, I sent him there for nearly 2 years, I just want my child to be able to learn and want to learn without being frightened of failing. If we did this properly, you wouldn't have to be spending money on tribunals and everything else, because every child would be getting the education they deserve.
Amy's struggles are all too familiar to Rhiannon, who spent months fighting for her son Ioan to have the place in a special school they felt he desperately needed.
Ioan is a 3-year-old little boy. He's very loving, happy. He loves running, spinning, jumping on his trampoline, playing with his bubble machine.
The family felt that the signs Ioan needed a special school placement were clear from the outset.
I felt like I had done everything, absolutely everything I possibly could, to show that Ioan had additional learning needs and needed a special school. But the evidence that I'd brought forward still didn't seem enough. If he wasn't offered special school, I'd be homeschooling him. There is no way on earth Ioan would manage, and the school, a mainstream school, would manage with Ioan. He eats non-edible items, he's got no awareness of danger, so he runs and he jumped from a height. If there's a door, a window, anything open, he will run through it and he'll be gone. He doesn't cope with crowds. So there were so many things that show that Ioan would never cope, and he's globally delayed. So non-verbal, he doesn't speak. There were so many things to show that he would never cope in a mainstream school.
Despite Ioan's needs, he was offered a place in a mainstream school.
It was awful, because I had the email at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Read the email. It said that Ioan was placed into mainstream with early years transition. I thought I was reading the email wrong, so I rang the local authority to double check. They told me to ring the mobile number on the email. So I got off the phone, rang the mobile number, it just rang and rang. So I kept on ringing, hanging up, ringing, hanging up, ringing, hanging up, until 3:30. 3:30 that phone went off. So for the whole weekend, I had nothing. It was horrendous, because I didn't know where to go, what to do. I was furious because nobody answered that phone.
Rhiannon challenged the decision, compiling pages of evidence to make the case for the education Ioan needed.
It took all of my time. It took a lot of the 6 weeks holidays. I've got 4 children, and like my husband said, it took over my life. It did. For them 4 weeks, it literally took over my life and nearly pushed me to breaking point. It was hard. It was so hard. It was upsetting. I spoke to my daughter's got spina bifida and hydrocephalus, so she's got a social worker from the disabled children's team. She took over our caseload for Ioan as a matter of urgency because she knew when she spoke to me on the phone, I burst into tears. I said, I can't cope. It's too much. It's too much pressure. Like, people working within the local authority, it's their job 9 to 5. Trying to do that with 4 children home from school through the school holidays, 2 children with additional needs, and trying to write and build a case for Ioan almost broke me. It's supposed to be person-centred, and that's really not the case. It's really not the case because you're not listened to. It was an awful process that I feel sorry for anyone going through it. It's such an emotional roller coaster. You're there ready to fight for it and battle the one, because it is a battle, it's a fight. You're there ready to give it your all one day, and the next day you've got nothing left in you because it's that constant fight, that constant battle.
And Rhiannon is worried that fighting for that support isn't an equal playing field.
If you're not able to use a computer, if you're not able to financially pay for Microsoft Word, what are those families supposed to do? Their children then are already losing before you started, and it's unfair. It's not fair. It's cost us. We've ended up paying for a different advocacy, which were absolutely amazing, but it cost us over £1,000. We didn't even get a tribunal, but that's what it cost us. But for my mental health, I needed that. I needed that advocacy. I needed that support. I think if I didn't have them supporting me, I don't know. I don't know whether I would have broke. It's something that you shouldn't have to do. You shouldn't have to fight for education for your child.
Before the case reached tribunal, Ioan was eventually offered a special school placement.
When I was given that news, I burst into tears because it was such a relief. It was such a sense of relief, and I think all my family felt it as well because he deserved that placement. We knew in our hearts that he needed that placement, and to be given that placement after that fight, oh my word, it was the best moment in the world. It really was.
Rhiannon now supports other parents who are fighting the same battles.
That is my goal. It's my goal to help other families and make sure that they don't feel isolated. I can't say that I will help them feel less stressed, because I think that you are always going to be like stressed, and the worry of not knowing whether your child is going to get what they need and deserve. But I can do my best to help and support other families, and that's my drive next. I'm adamant that I'm going to be helping other families not to have to suffer the way we have. I don't think anyone should have to go through that. I think it's an awful process. It's just the most horrendous experience that I've had to face, really.
In the year before we made this film, 14% of calls to our advice team involved additional learning needs, with cases from every corner of Wales, often from parents who, like Amy and Rhiannon, have found themselves at breaking point, and where children are not getting the education they have a right to receive.
The families we've heard from are just a couple of examples of the struggles that hundreds of families across Wales are facing every day. And what struck me the most is that these families feel like they're in a daily battleground just to get the needs of their child met. And it shouldn't be that these parents are, literally feeling like they're in a boxing ring fighting the system, which clearly just isn't working. The new ALN system and arrangements were supposed to make things easier and more effective in meeting the needs of children with additional learning needs, but clearly from the cases that we get as an office, that's not happening. It's more complicated rather than easier, and children are just not having their needs met. And if we don't change things quickly, if we don't really get a handle on the system and make change quickly, we really risk failing a generation of children.